all set?
Let's go for it. We're all set. I think we're all set.
We're all set, right? We're all good. Everybody ready?
You gave them a one, right?
Well, I figured since you,
Oh, no, I didn't. It's going to look busy.
Ben, 30 seconds, please.
Good?
You're all set? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
we're going to promote you to a panelist on Zoom.
I just did. Did you? I think you have to accept it. We do it again.
Thank you. Okay, I'm good.
You're good?
Mhm.
Okay. Hi, hello, my name is Ed Hoops. I'm the chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. We will now reconvene the February 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission as required by General Laws, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. The public are able to attend this meeting either in person or via alternative public access. Members of the public may watch the meeting live on Channel 18 or watch and/or participate in the meeting hosted in Zoom. The meeting notice provides necessary instructions to join the meeting via Zoom. Please note that audio, video, and screen sharing functions will be disabled for all attendees. You may request to participate by using the raise hand function. I don't think we have anybody who's remote, right? All right. Gonna take a roll call. Ed Hoops is here. Tom Durkin.
Here.
Tricia Mulhern.
Here.
Ellie Lawrence.
Here.
Rick Bishop is not here. Paul Huggins.
Here.
And David Bernstein.
Here.
All right, with that, we are ready to go. This is the Yarmouth Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. First order of business is a request for determination of applicability for Mary and Curran Simpson, 30 Moss Road, Yarmouth, proposed construction of a 12 by 26 foot addition, rear deck replacement, front deck replacement with addition, rinse station replacement within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Is there anybody here for that one?
Yes, we have Mike Ball in the audience, in the Zoom. I can't unmute him though. Yeah. Yep.
Hello, this is Mike Ball. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Mike.
Hey, Ed Hoops, how are you? Sorry I couldn't get there in person. I apologize for that. I'm hoping this is acceptable to present remotely.
Okay,
This is an RDA for the owners of 30 Moss. They are going to be adding an addition to one side of the house and replacing decks on both sides of the house. This is a flood zone only property. We are outside of the buffer zone to the nearest wetland resource areas. I do believe it meets all the performance standards and any performance standards under your local bylaw regulations. Fairly simple project, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have.
okay, thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike from the commission?
No.
Kelly?
No.
Oh, sorry, no?
No.
Kelly?
No, I have no comments.
Does anybody in the audience have any comments, questions with this one? Anybody out in Zoom land who has any comments, questions with this one? I see no hands raised. If not, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2?
So moved.
Second. Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously. All right, thank you, Mike.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
One to sign. All right, next order of
One
business
son.
is a notice of intent for Joanne Nolan Edwards, trustee for 10 Berwick Road, Yarmouth, proposed construction of a single-family dwelling within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Mike O'Coin. I'm with All Cape Septic and Survey. And We're representing the Edwards Family Trust this evening. Joanne Edwards, one of the trustees. They're looking to propose a 3-bedroom home on an 8,000 square foot lot. It's approximately 80 by 100. It's in the flood zone area only. It is outside any BBWs or any coastal areas. And they're looking to put a 3-bedroom home with a deck on the west side and the south side, 3-bedroom septic system with a more than likely shell driveway, but it will be pervious. And I'm here this evening to see if there's any questions. We obviously have to file a notice of intent because we're in the flood zone. And I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Questions from the commission? Nothing?
No,
Kelly, any comments?
So I just recommended including, I think these are shown on the plan anyway, but including the condition for dry wells and pervious driveway. There is some grading on the property, but it's limited to about 1.5 feet around the house. I don't see any issues with that. So I'd recommend an approval with conditions.
All right, does anybody in the audience have any comments, questions about this one? Out on Zoom, is that somebody raised hand or is that not more participants? I don't see anybody on Zoom with a hand raised.
well, somebody's in chat.
Oh, let me check. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Unrelated, okay, thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion then to accept the project with special conditions?
So move, David.
Second, Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
We've got 2 to sign this time. Right, next order of business continued from a notice of intent continued from January 20th, 2022 for SE 83-2313 Harold and Melissa Prokop, 41 Powers Lane, Yarmouth. Proposed landscaping, patio, and driveway relocation within the buffer zone for coastal dune and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Hey, Phil, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Phil Cheney, landscape designer here. We've made some revisions to the project since our first meeting. We've eliminated the paving stones from the patio and walk area so that all the surfaces we're shuffling around will now be gravel surfaces. We're also reducing the size of the gravel somewhat so that there is now no increase in any gravel area over what is currently there now. Other primary change was the note to remove the quote boardwalk, the rollout wooden walkway that goes adjacent to the steps that was intruding on the dune, taking that out and patching that with beach grass as was suggested. Also, a couple of stepping stones that were not approved will be removed there as well. According to the certificate of compliance, the stepping stones from the bottom of the stairs to the passway under the stairway were previously approved during the certificate of compliance. So we're leaving those still on the plan. The only other thing I did not mention last time that the intent was to install dry wells for the downspouts out in the front as well. And so there's the note there for those on the front. But I think perhaps we've engaged with most of your concerns regarding this project, and we're hoping now that it's in an acceptable form that you might be able to approve.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Phil. Questions from the board? Nothing from anybody?
I do appreciate changing the gravel as opposed to having that pavers put down there.
Very good.
You said you shortened the sale area of the,
It's the walk area primarily between the driveway, the parking, and the wooden
okay,
deck. That
okay,
was
I see it.
reduced somewhat.
No, I have nothing further.
Anybody else? Pat? No?
Well said.
I just want to say I appreciate the changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly?
So yeah, I still have some concerns about the proposed work. The plan is still indicating that the area, the limit of dune goes around the house, whereas the permit plan from the construction of the house had indicated that entire site is a coastal dune. So this is work within a resource area. And even if it wasn't considered to be within a resource area, it's certainly within the 35-foot setback to a resource area. And within the flood zone. Hardscape is really discouraged within a coastal dune. So typically for the reconstruction of the houses along the stretch, we really do limit it to the existing footprint of what was previously there in terms of structure, and the rest of the property, aside from what would be necessary for some parking, is supposed to be left to allow the dune to function as a dune should function. So allowing for movement of sand and to avoid, or to allow sand to be moved through wind and wave energy, and to avoid any kind of negative impacts during a heavy storm where we're seeing whatever's being put in this area is going to become debris in that location. So I don't feel that the project as proposed has met the performance standards. I certainly think that it's a great idea to be adding some supplementary plantings to the dune area where there are some bare areas, but I'm not supportive of adding any kind of hardscape, the cobblestones, the gravel, the piles for the shade. I think that area should all be left to act as the natural dune as it was proposed previously.
If I can respond to that, we're not
Go ahead.
doing any more disturbance than is currently there in gravel and lawn now. So we're not increasing the hardscape. The only thing that perhaps could be considered new there would be the shade structure itself, which would be 4 posts in the ground. So, I mean, there are cobblestones around the parking now. There might be a few more when we're done with this layout, but the same amount of gravel and disturbance. It's just, we're just reshuffling the location. And working within the boundaries that are already lawn or gravel.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, what would be the general size of the gravel itself? I mean, the sand will blow over on it, and how will they keep that?
The goal right this time is to use a 3/4 inch rounded beach stone, basically, which is a pretty standard gravel stone, 3/4 inch. Most native stone gravel driveways you see, they're using the 3/4 inch.
And how would they be removing the sand if it blows over onto that? How would they maintain that?
It's a gravel driveway now that does not appear to be accumulating sand in most conditions. So that really hasn't been an issue. It's going to be isolated primarily within the lawn. So, I mean, perhaps you're raking the gravel around a little bit to kind of tidy it up. You might be shoveling off some sand if it blows on there, but it's an existing gravel driveway in that location, existing lawn.
Okay, you're all set? Right, anybody else? Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments, questions on this one? Is there anybody? I cannot see the Zoom screen for anything.
Oh, have a look here. There's no hands raised.
That's chat, okay. All right, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions?
So move, David.
Is there a second?
Second, Ellie?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
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 Are you
Too
serious?
nice.
Okay, so that's 3 to 3.
No, Tom.
Sorry, Phil, that's the way it goes. 3 to 3 says it doesn't carry.
Okay.
Who was who was the third? It was just two.
Let's
that
get a
were nays.
recount.
I thought it was Pat and Ellie.
Yeah,
Right.
that's two nays. So
and
it's,
me.
oh, you said nay too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't hear your
Sorry.
vote, Ed. I was a little confused
Yeah.
myself, so.
I'm sorry,
Right there.
I've never been accused of not being
Yeah,
heard.
and nay.
I'm very sorry, Phil.
I'm not familiar with, seconding a motion and then voting against it. That's just kind of.
Well,
surprising.
you always make the motion and the positive, okay? And so then you have to second it to move the motion. And call an order. And then we make the vote from there, so.
Okay, so you're saying you'd like to just see it stay as it remains then? Okay.
Given what's there, I mean,
Okay, with no improvements.
I'm not gonna
Could
I'm
have
not
the
gonna discuss any
improvements of
further.
the planting and
That may be something they'll approach in a different format.
So just procedurally, we have to issue
The
an
denial.
approval or a denial. So I don't know whether I could recommend either a motion to deny and then giving the reasons why that it doesn't meet the performance standards for coastal dune, or you could approve the project with the condition that it only includes the plantings and the gravel and hardscape is removed from the plan. Because then it's an approval, but obviously they may not want to proceed on those grounds.
Right? Would either of you two like to change your vote?
We'll make a new motion. wouldn't
Or
we?
somebody can make
Or
it.
if someone wants to change their vote.
Anybody want to change the vote? No.
Just so I'm clear, you're talking about the idea of approving it with just the plantings.
I'll change my vote.
But you're gonna,
Yeah, I'll vote aye.
with that exception then, right?
With that
the-
exception, yeah.
Only for the plantings alone,
Okay.
right?
Okay, so the motion was changed to, so the motion was
the motion would be
amended by
changed,
Ellie.
right?
Okay. And so
Just to
then if you
include
do,
plantings only.
so then,
Plantings.
Well,
do
Amended motion.
plantings only, then you just have to take another vote, right?
right. So, and who seconded that? David?
Well, I had David made the
Made
motion.
the motion.
David made the
So he has to
motion.
amend the motion.
So will
Unless
you-
it's a totally new motion. You can make another motion, right?
but we were amending
Yeah,
it.
you can make
Yeah, it
another,
would be
well,
cleaner.
David would have to amend it, or someone can make a new motion because
have
that
to-
one didn't carry.
We have to amend it because we already voted. The only way we could do it is to amend it.
You can make a new motion,
I'll
right?
just make a new one.
That
Do you want
motion
to
didn't
amend it, or
carry.
do you want to make a new?
I'd say make a new one.
Okay, so,
The old one didn't pass. And
all right, so we will make a new motion to approve the project, but limited only to the plantings and not the hardscape. Would somebody like to make that motion?
With the hardscape that's there that was
With it
removed.
that's there,
that shows, yeah. Yes, I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm still going to say nay, just
Okay,
so it's
so it's 5-1.
5-1. Yep.
Okay.
Did you vote for that?
Yes.
yes.
Still sign it,
And
right?
there are two of them. Yep.
But you're not.
I'm not, no. All right, so you're good.
Okay.
You're good to
We're
go,
good.
Phil.
Thank you.
They'll work on the order of conditions.
Two signatures.
Right, next order of business is another continued notice of intent continued from January 20th, 2022 for SE 83-2314. John Patrick Python and Julia Lauman, 31 Gristmill Lane, This proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling with elevated foundation, new driveway, and alterations existing septic system in the riverfront area, buffer zone to a salt marsh, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Sequin. I'm an engineer with Ryder and Wilcox. I'm representing John Python and Julia Lohman, who are the owners of the property at 31 Gristmill Lane. It's a 9,500 square foot lot located at the very end of Gristmill Lane, which is a paved road. It overlooks Mill Creek to the east on the other side of Mill Creek Road. We located, there's a salt marsh that lies between Mill Creek and Gristmill Road. We located the edge of the marsh to the east. It also wraps around the end of Gristmill Road and to the south of the property, even coming onto the property to some extent on the south. So we're showing the 35-foot, 50-foot, and 100-foot buffers from the salt marsh. The 100-foot buffer virtually covers the entire property with the exception of a tiny little, the northwest corner. The entire property is within the riverfront. The plan isn't big enough to show the 200-foot riverfront area. We were able to show the 100-foot inner riparian zone, which goes through the existing building, and roughly 2/3 of the site is within the inner riverfront area. The property is not within estimated habitat of rare species. The existing building is a single-story, 3-bedroom dwelling built in 1963. There's a first-floor deck and a drive-under garage. Most of the site is developed with irrigated lawn. There's a paved driveway located literally adjacent to the salt marsh. There's retaining walls and brick walkways. The existing septic system is a Title V system. It was upgraded in 2004, most recently inspected in 2016, and was found to be in good condition. What's being proposed is the removal of the existing dwelling completely, including the deck and foundation, removal of the existing paved driveway and all the hardscaping, and construction of a new 2-story building, still remaining 3 bedrooms. The new building will be elevated with I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, the entire property as far as resource areas, the entire property is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We've got an A zone elevation 11 here. So the new building will be constructed on a foundation with the first floor elevated above the flood elevation in accordance with FEMA requirements. Front porch and steps will be constructed on sonotubes. The existing paved driveway will be removed, and in its place, a smaller pervious driveway will be constructed on the opposite side of the property, so it's much further away from the salt marsh than what currently exists. And we propose to connect the new building to the existing Title V system. So the existing system will remain as is, and just a new pipe from the new building into the existing septic tank. I gave you a whole lot of numbers. Any combination of existing and proposed building, hardscaping, impervious, just to give you the information to see some things are going up, some things are going down. But just to give you a summary of what's being proposed within the various buffer zones. Within the 35-foot buffer zone, the enclosed habitable footprint is increasing by 119 square feet. And the total coverage within the 35-foot buffer, including hardscaping, decks, et cetera, is being reduced by 931 square feet. So a significant reduction in coverage within the 35-foot buffer, but there is an increase in habitable footprint within the 35-foot buffer. In the 35 to 50-foot buffer, there's the enclosed habitable footprint is increasing by 8 square feet, but the overall coverage with it between 35 and 50 feet is again being reduced by 288 square feet. And in the 50 to 100-foot buffer, we are actually reducing the square footage of habitable footprint, but overall the coverage is increasing by 36 square feet. Across the whole 100-foot buffer to the salt marsh, we are proposing just over 600 square foot reduction in coverage, total building, deck, driveway, hardscaping. We are proposing to restore as much of the 35-foot buffer as is feasible, I think. And then also going a little bit beyond the 35-foot buffer to provide a little bit of an improvement in the natural vegetated area. So we're proposing approximately 1,600 square feet of native species that will be, as I said, mostly within the 35-foot buffer, but then also extending between the 35 and 50-foot buffer. The plantings will be a mixture of species chosen from the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension's list of trees and shrubs for coastal environments. I didn't give details on exactly what species are being proposed simply because I wanted to make sure that you are satisfied with the location and size of the proposed mitigation area before we got too involved with picking out individual species. The remainder of the disturbed area will be loamed and seeded with a drought-tolerant fescue grass mix. So that's what's being proposed. In my narrative, I provided a construction protocol, and just briefly, a fabric silt fence will basically be installed around the perimeter of the site, with the exception of the existing driveway, just so that they can get in and out of the site. The existing septic system, the silt fence will go around that just to protect the septic system components from damage during construction. During the demolition, all the demolition material will be placed directly into trucks for removal from site, no stockpiling of demolition material on the site. Once the building is removed, a dumpster could be placed in the driveway and used for construction debris. The dumpster will be provided with a cover or be deep enough to prevent windblown debris. During the excavation for the new foundation, all excavated material will also be placed directly into trucks for removal from the site. There won't be any stockpiling of excavated material on the site. And when the building is complete, the roof runoff will be contained through either gutters and downspouts to dry wells or crushed stone at the roof drip line. I think lastly, just to address the Riverfront performance standards, I included a review of or an evaluation of the performance standards for the Riverfront. To summarize that, we have positioned the house as far landward on the site as is feasible, without further encroaching on the existing septic system. The septic system is as far back as it can go, so there's nothing we can do about that. So we did position the house as far back as possible without encroaching on the septic system. The impervious area is going from an existing 3,114 square feet to 2,081 square feet. So we are reducing the impervious area by a little over 1,000 square feet in the riverfront. We're also replacing existing irrigated lawn with native species. Stormwater is being controlled during construction through the installation of the silt fence, and post-construction through the control of the roof runoff. The increase of structure within the 100-foot riverfront, we're going from 1,216 square feet to 1,696 square feet for an increase of 480 square feet of structure within the 100-foot buffer to the river. The removal of the paved driveway and the replacement with a smaller pervious driveway is a reduction of 728 square feet of coverage. So that gives us more than the 1-to-1 ratio of restored area to new structure. The structure within the 200-foot riverfront area is going from 1,862 square feet to 2,268 square feet for an increase of 406 square feet. But again, the removal of the paved, impervious paved driveway and replacement with smaller pervious driveway gives us 728 square feet of restored area, which again is in excess, more than the 1-to-1 ratio required. So I think that's it as far as my presentation. This does have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. It hasn't been filed yet, so we don't have a hearing date yet. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Just my comments, I mean, first of all, I always like to see people getting rid of the paved surfaces and the lawns whenever possible. So I applaud your efforts for that. I think you could do a little bit better in the design. I mean, since this is a raise and replace, I think you could pretty much set the footprint for anywhere, any place you want. So I would like to see a reduction in footprint that, or you're not going to be able to move the house too much, but a reduction in footprint that will bring it back to at least existing, where it was existing. It looks like existing the corner of the living quarters or living portion of the house is 25 feet, and we're looking here at 20.6 feet for the proposed. So I wouldn't encourage. I mean, normally if this were not a raise and replace, it was just an addition or something, we wouldn't let you go any closer than the 25 feet. And here, this is a raise and replace, and so I don't see any reason why you can't adjust that and remove as much of it as possible from the 35 as possible. So I think you could do a little bit better on that end of it. So again, if my understanding, you're going to do most of your mitigation planting then within the area where the current driveway is that right?
Yes, where the existing driveway is and also where the existing irrigated lawn is.
Okay, so I mean, generally, and you can ask Mr. Bart just because I was just talking to him about this. Generally, I like to see where the area is going to be planted. Have some sort of an idea of where the area is planted, but I also like to see some sort of a list that goes along with that, so we have something to approve. I mean, I realize we can approve it based on receipt of a plant mitigation plan. But I would rather get away from that. I don't want to make Kelly the one has to constantly be looking at that. It should be something that the commission is reviewing. So that would be my comments. I'll
Can
turn it
I,
over-
can I just
Sure, go ahead.
ask for clarification on, so it sounds like you're saying don't reduce the setback to the marsh from what presently exists. Don't get closer to the marsh than what presently exists.
Yeah, I mean, generally that's what we always ask for that. So even, like I said, if this if this was just an addition, we would ask that we would not allow you to go any closer to the resource area. And since this is a raise and replace, I think you're a little bit freer in the way you position your foundation. So I would say that again, not to go any closer. If you should be trying to pull it away as much as possible.
Okay. And then as far as the footprint, if we were able to take the same proposed footprint, but reconfigure it, so is that,
Yeah, I mean, I don't care what the foundation itself or the footprint itself looks like as much as it is, as long as you can, if you can configure it some different way on the lot that would give you the full space that you're looking for and still maintain at least the minimum setback that we have already, that would be fine too.
Okay.
I don't have an issue with that.
okay. And then, yes, I understand we can give you a list of species that we intend to use in the
I would
mitigation
include that
area.
and then just, call out some, at least, I mean, it doesn't have to be an exact, if you get to the point where you have to, you're going to go ahead and put some sort of a planting mitigation planting area on the plan. That has to be adjusted when it finally comes time to the very moment when we start planning on how we're going to actually put the plants in the ground.
Mhm.
That's fine. You can come to
Okay.
Kelly for that and she can sign off on those sorts of things. But I particularly like to see, roughly where the planting area is and the types of plants that you're planning on planting.
Mhm.
And again, if you run into issues where in the future down the line, when it comes time to do the planting, you are having an issue with inventory, you just can't get the particular plants, then by all means come back to Kelly and ask, because like we can't get this and can we substitute this?
Okay.
So, anybody else in the commission?
Yeah, I have a question about the porch. It seems to be 14 feet from the salt marsh. To piggyback on what Ed said, 20 feet, I'd like to see that either pushed back or made smaller, but 14 feet doesn't seem to be very much. Presently, under your closest you are to the building, presently, well, there's steps, I guess, that are 17 feet, but
The existing deck is 17.6 feet.
yeah. Okay, so it's a deck. And then if you see the new thing, the new plan, it's 14.4.
14.4.
Somehow that could be, the porch be made smaller so that it can be further away.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Well,
Pat?
I was gonna-
Sorry, Pat.
just gonna say on the planting, the elevation, it says the driveway is so low when you're, it would be probably good to look at some plants that are more like wetland
Mhm.
species.
Yep, Kelly did suggest that.
Okay.
Yep,
That's all I have to say.
okay, thank you.
Ellie?
Well, I have two remarks, and I have to agree with Ed that the setback to the marsh it does show an encroachment more so than the existing building at this time. So I have to agree with that. No more encroachment on it. The other question I have is where that wall, where the driveway is,
Mhm.
how's that going to be graded in to Is that going to stay there or is that going to be
The
regraded?
walls will come out, and then that area filled in so that the, basically, like where you see the 6-foot contour in the front would connect to the 6-foot contour on the side.
Okay.
So it would be one,
So it
continuous
would just continue the way it's
sloping.
supposed to slope?
Yeah.
Okay.
8 foot, right?
Huh?
8 foot, wasn't it?
No, it's 6 in the front.
The 6 is right in front of the
Steps.
porch on the proposed plan.
You don't, that's not the proposed plan. Those are both existing conditions.
Hmm?
Those are existing conditions plans.
This is proposed.
It's right here.
Oh, but that doesn't have the
This is 6
mitigation.
foot. It's the 126.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just me having a small problem. Okay, go ahead.
That's why I said that.
That's right. That's why you keep me honest there.
That's all I
Okay,
have.
that's it.
Mhm.
Paul?
All set.
Okay, Kelly?
So I just want to clarify a little more on the area of the mitigation plantings and the removal of that wall, because the proposed plan doesn't show the regrading as far as I could tell. So if we could just add in what is going to be that proposed regrading, so it's clear for whoever's doing the work.
Mhm.
So it's going to just look like a slope down. Is the area where the driveway is actually going to have any fill in that area, or is it going to be at the elevation that it's at now? Minus
Well,
the
it
hardscape?
will be, I would like to bring it up to the elevation outside of the retaining walls. So basically filling in between the retaining walls,
So where,
but sloping up to match the existing grade in the front, that's in the front of the house.
let me bring up a photo. It might be a little
Yeah, I figured that 127. This is the 126 plan.
Okay, thank you. I wonder why I don't have that. That's why. Thank you.
This area through here is pretty much at the same elevation as the wetland. So you are going to be bringing fill into this area. This one that shows it all.
We would be bringing fill into, well, I just kind of roughly, so just, extending the 4-foot contour across the driveway and the 6-foot contour across the driveway. I don't know if you can see that. But then matching the existing grade out at the road.
Do you mind if I come over and have a look at that?
I mean, it's very,
We can't say it's
well, we've
going
got
in a
the
wetland.
existing
It's in a
6
wetland.
here, and then the existing 6 on the other side of the retaining wall. So just connecting across there and then doing the same with the 4s. And then this would be,
at the current grade that it is now.
right.
Does anyone want to see that closer, or you guys got it? I'm the only one who's-
I think I understand what she's trying to do is sweep it around.
Yeah,
right?
so it's
Yeah.
kind of
Where's the driveway?
Swept around.
sloping down kind of
Yeah.
around that way. So this is the high point around the house, and it's sloping down to, this is the lowest point here on the driveway. So there will be fill through that.
We can't really say that's filling the wetland because it isn't a
No,
wetland
no,
at this point.
no. I was just, wanting to see what kind of, like, are we going to
What the
get it
contour-
filled up to this line and then a
Right.
steep slope to the wetland?
So
So
the existing wall right here?
there's
Yes.
an existing wall here and then a little one here. So
Okay, so she just wants to kind of bring it down this way over the driveway.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So she's going to take that slope and bring it down towards where the driveway is.
highest up by the house. And
Yeah,
it'll slope down.
slope down. And where will the runoff be then?
Towards the wetland.
Okay.
But the area is all gonna be.
It will be, right, there'll be the native shrubs in that filled area. which will help to slow down the runoff.
So
So
you're
if,
regrading within the 50, is that right?
Sorry?
You're regrading within the 50.
Within the 35.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure why that wasn't even,
Yeah, that's why I was
why
asking
isn't that
like
even on
for
the
that
plan?
detail on the plan. So I think it needs to be shown on the plan. Just show those lines on the plan and show that that area is going to be regraded.
Okay, anybody else? I'm sorry, Kelly, you.
I think. Yeah, that's all I have.
Anybody in the audience have any comments, questions on this one? And on Zoom? Nope. So it looks like we're going to be continuing, correct? How much time do you need to put all of this stuff together before you come back?
Do you have any idea how much, I mean, if we're looking at maybe reducing some of the footprint? Can we come back in a month, do you think? Okay,
Okay, in a month?
in a month, plus or
Okay,
minus?
that'll work, right?
So that'd be March 3rd with new material by the 24th.
Okay, so March 3rd, and you have to have everything in to us by February 24th. Does that work?
February 24th. If it doesn't, then we'll request a continuation, but
Okay.
that's what we will shoot for.
All right. If with that, unless there's any further discussion, would somebody like to make a motion until March 3rd?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we'll see you on March 3rd.
Okay, thank you very much.
David, did you make that motion?
I made the motion.
David and Pat, I think.
Ellie.
Ellie, sorry. I heard somebody
I
that
couldn't
way.
recognize the voice. We're all a little muffled.
Pass it down, don't
Yes.
sign it.
No sign. Don't sign. Just pass it on.
No, son.
All right. Next order
I
of
do want to see that other one. I have to skip.
business
You don't
is
necessarily
another
need them
continued
because we
notice of
have them
intent
in the
from
receipt.
January 20, 2022 for SE 83-2318. Phyllis Tamalo, 40 Prince Road, Yarmouth, proposed extension of existing shorefront protection within a coastal beach, coastal bank, and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Did you want to put them in?
So you have the file.
That's down.
Oh, okay.
Pass those down and have them put them in the last file.
Goes into the last file? Pardon? Goes into the last file. Okay.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Mark Burgess of Shorefront Consulting, representing the applicants for the next 5 hearings. So the first 2, we can do these separately, but they're the same project together, really. We did finally get the DEP file number, and they had the same comments as you did, Ed. I wish I had known that before I came in the room, but nonetheless, I've spoken to both applicant. Well, I've spoken to this applicant, and I'm going to get like Lindsay out there, and we're going to take a look whether we do a living shoreline or some combination. I'd like to try to do something a little more robust than just fiber rolls. So we're going to put our heads together and figure that out, and then you'll get a revised plan that shows the new design. And that's really about it. And that goes for the next hearing as well.
All right, so we'll do it formally for the next one as well in just a minute. Do you need, what, 6 weeks?
I'm going to say 6 because I already have 2 hearings on March 3rd.
Okay, so the 17th.
March 17th, material by the 10th.
Okay, so you got that, March 17th hearing for the material by the 10th of March. All good with that?
By March 10th?
Yep.
Okay, I might have a hearing on this. I'm stacking them up, so we'll see.
All right,
We know how that went 2 weeks ago.
I know.
Yeah,
All right, so do I have a motion to continue this to March 17th? Is
So moved, Ellie.
there a second?
Second, Dave.
Ellie and David? Is Is there, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, so moving on, another continued notice of intent from January 20th, 2022 for SE 83-2317, Philip Pears and Sheila Tuck for 44 Prince Road, Yarmouth. Proposed extension of existing shorefront protection within a coastal beach, coastal bank, and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Again, that's the same issue, Mark, right?
Ditto.
Okay, so 317, material by the 10th of March.
So moved, Ellie.
Second, David.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Put those two, don't sign anything. All right, next order of business is another continued notice of intent. Continued from January 20th, 2022 for SE 83-2316, Nicholas and Donna Danino for 140 Mayflower Terrace, Yarmouth. Proposed extension of existing walkway for a pier, ramp and float within land under salt ponds and land containing shellfish.
Hey, Mark again. Yeah, so I went through my whole presentation last time, and then I learned that there were some open orders of conditions on the property. So I've since contacted Dan, the engineer for the property. I talked to him today. He thinks he can get out there and get what you need to get the letters and everything for the next hearing in 2 weeks. So we need to continue this one for him to do his thing, and then I can do my thing.
We have room for that? No.
You have what?
We have another very full
Very
agenda.
full. Let's,
Oh,
I was hoping you were going to say you needed a month, but
well, yeah, the month is still going to stack up. Let's shoot for that. I mean, our lives are just crazy. So if anything needs to be done out there that's different, that's going to kick it down the road too. So
okay, so you're shooting for
Going for March 3rd or next
March
meeting?
3rd or the next meeting?
the next meeting.
Okay.
Next meeting.
So February 17th.
And you're doing an updated plan as well, right?
Yes, I talked to him about that today. What happened was they have upland contours that were in NAVD 88, and they had the water shots, which are in addition to, usually they do it separately, and those are in mean low water. So I got them to match today. So along with everything else, we'll get you the right plan. But the elevation view is correct. That's in NAVD 88. The contours in the water were shifted or labeled in mean low water, so they were like off by a foot. So sorry for that confusion. I had to look at it for a while to figure out what was going on.
Okay,
Yeah, me
so
too.
we'll need that plan then by the 10th. You still make that mark?
The plan, sure. I think for this project, the COCs are what's going to get in the way.
Yeah, probably.
We'll see.
All right. So do I have a motion to continue this to February 17th, 2022?
So moved.
All right, Ellie and David. All those in favor?
I
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Don't hurt yourselves on the size of the file.
No, there's open permits.
Next order of business is another continued hearing from January 20th, 2022 for SE 83-2315. Thomas and Lisa Dwyer for 160 Mayflower Terrace, Yarmouth. Proposed reconstruction of an existing pier, ramp and floats within salt marsh, land under salt ponds, land containing shellfish, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. We did not take any comment on, or we did not, all we did was open it and continued it, so.
Right. I missed you guys by,
everybody's good with that.
I had 3 hearings in Dennis and I missed you by 6 minutes. Okay, so yes, Mark Burgess, Shorefront Consulting, representing the Dwyers. This was actually the result of an observation and a violation a couple of years ago, and it's just frankly taken that long to get it going and coordinate it with other projects. The shortest story I can tell you is that where the dock is now, where you've seen it, is where it was in 1971. As I tried to explain in the narrative, sometime when they bought the house, I think in 2012, maybe, I'm not certain exactly the dates in the narrative. let's see, no, when they bought the house, the dock had been moved by somebody at some point, maybe the previous owners in 2012, I think, by the aerials. And they moved it over by, there's a little path that goes down the hill. They moved it way close to the property line. And that was the Google Earth repositioning that was noticed. Oh, no, sorry, I got to back up. See, it's confusing even to me. So they bought the house with the dock in the old position. Then they moved it. The current owners moved it, unbeknownst to them, back to the same position that it was in 1971, further away from the property line. So that was done, I think, 2017-ish. And that's when Kelly noticed through Google Earth that it had moved. So they bought the property with it in already a moved location that it wasn't ever in. And then the new owners came in and moved it back to where it should be and where it was historically. So after a long explanation, where the dock is now is where it was in 1971. It's where it had been for quite a long time. When it got moved, that's a crappy place for it. They moved it back and it's where it should be now. So the project itself, it didn't meet the current bylaws for depth. So we are extending it to go out the full 80 feet beyond mean high water. At 80 feet out, they have 3.2 feet of water at low tide. And the landward side of the floats has 2.7. I know we've approved projects before with float stops at like 2.75 or something like that. With sea level rise, you can wait a couple of months and they'll gain 5/100ths of a foot maybe. But those are the measurements from the site survey. So the dock gets extended, how long is that? About, what did I say? Oh, 32 and a half feet. And then they're gonna relocate and reuse the existing ramp. And then they're reusing or rebuilding the 4x10 float. And then they're adding one new float to replace the one that's there, which is 8x24. And that adds up to exactly your 200 square feet. It's similar to the configuration that it's in now. They just are pushing it out further. They want to go with the fiberglass pilings, but the standard 2-pile design. The spans between the piles are 16 feet. The closest piling will be right at the back edge of where the concrete wall is. And then over the marsh with a step down to get back to the original height. So the dock is also being raised up from 4.8 to 7.7. So almost 3 feet higher than it is now over the marsh. And you guys are out there. I think you can see that the marsh is still doing pretty well under the dock, even though it's a little low, but they're going to raise it up 3 feet. That brings it level with the grade at the beginning of it. And like I said, with a step down, the dock out, the ramp, and the floats. There is a variance requested. And I want you to know that every time I do something like this, there's a lot of thought that gets put into this as far as common sense, where things should be, the ease of for everybody concerned. I don't take variances or decisions like that lightly, and I don't ever intend to present one that's going to offend the commission, okay? This one to me makes perfect sense. Because the dock is where it was in 1971, it's a good place for it. Moving it away another, it's 57 feet now. So roughly 20, less than 20 feet. If we move it, what is it, 18 feet? Do the math, yeah, about 18 feet to the south, it puts it right on top of the patio. Well, the concrete retaining wall is still like this much higher than the patio. So now we got to go on the patio, which you want to be able to hang out on the patio, not walk through it to get to a dock, and then go up higher over the wall and back down again. It just didn't make sense to me for historical reasons and practicality. Further, the abutting pier, whether or not anything ever happens to it, is really close to the line. And I'm guessing if they ever came before you, that they would be asked to move it. And if they only moved it, what did I say, 18 feet, then they would meet the 75-foot setback from this project. So the point being, I didn't see any harm in leaving it where it is. The setbacks are fine for the kind of size of boat that's going to be transiting in this waterway. We've talked about this before. The project did go through waterways, and I believe they recommended or supported it. And I think with that, I can address questions from you.
It predates the regulations.
Oh, Kelly, do you want me to address your comments that you had?
Sure.
Okay. Where are, oh,
I can go home.
I got them. Yeah. Yeah, so you were saying the aerial showed it 36 feet float to float. That was correct when it was where it was, but then when these guys moved it, that's when you noticed that they moved it and that it wasn't a permitted pier. So it is 50, the way it's drawn right now is 57.4 from the dock to the north and 112 from the dock to the south.
Have to check when the photo,
I put that in the narrative because I went through the aerials. to
because
try
it
to-
looked like it was measured from, you weren't measuring from the float, you were measuring from the pier.
I didn't see it with the float in, and it wasn't, when they did the survey, the float wasn't in.
You still got to measure from the float, even if it's not there.
Well, yeah, I could do that on Google Earth, but otherwise, so you're saying that from float to float now, based on Google Earth?
It's 36 feet.
I went dock to dock because that's what was surveyed on the plan.
Yeah, so we usually go for the closest 2 points on the docks,
Okay, so on Google Earth, float to float, you measure how much?
36 feet.
Now I see where you're coming from. So I guess it would depend on, geez, imagine how close it was when it was where it was.
Because that's the current location, right? Just on the end of the house there.
Yeah.
I had to go back to get one with the floats in it, but I didn't go back far.
It used to be
Yeah.
here, because there's a little cut down through here, so it used to be here.
You could have stepped from one to the other.
Yeah.
Unless the other wasn't there.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, that other one needs to move as well. But I guess seeing as we're talking about it, when this was before the commission the commission requested that it be moved over
Was it before you before?
for the violation. So the minutes of the meeting showed the commission asking for it to be moved over so that it was centered on the property, so that it was greater distance from the neighboring dock.
Oh, was I here for that?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I
don't
think,
know. Did
I
you-
think I might have got hired shortly after that meeting,
That's probably the case.
in which case I didn't realize that.
Do you need to hear it, or do you believe us?
No, I trust you, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that's,
Well, it's in Kelly's comments too, and it's not an unreasonable question. It's a very reasonable question. I'm sharing with you what my brain methodology and I don't know, for lack of a common sense, to say that it makes sense. It makes sense to me
But
to
mostly
leave it
from
where
a-
it is.
Mostly from a convenience point of view because of the location of the patio, right?
Yeah, it's a mess to try to put it where it needs to be. And if waterways didn't have a problem with it, I guess it depends, you have to look at what is the purpose of the 75-foot setback? Is it to avoid a demolition derby on Bass River? Or is it some other reason? In general, I akin it to, boats being able to navigate safely without crashing into each other. And that's not the case on this particular pond, on this particular site.
I think typically we look at distances between docks so that we can, it goes more toward the cumulative effects side of it. Because we don't want to keep keep giving variances and then having people cram more docks in a smaller space for cumulative effect, really more than anything else.
That won't happen here because you have the two bordering properties. You won't get it, you won't get another dock in here, in between these two, you know?
I agree with him. It's cumulative. You'll have all sorts of little toothpicks sticking out all along the shoreline is basically what I.
You also have this business.
Well, there is that.
That's my concern.
All right, so are you good? Do you want to
I
carry this?
had
Do you need
one
to carry this any
other-
Oh, there were
further,
some
or-
others.
There's, okay, carry on.
The 4x10 float was proposed because that's the configuration that they like and they want to keep it like that. There was adequate water depth on the landward side there, so I thought that would be okay. And if you are really against that, that we just have to extend the pier more, which leaves more permanent structure in the water.
Yeah, it's kind of a trade-off because either you
Yeah.
have floats sitting in shallow water seasonally, or you have permanent pier that is much higher. So it's kind of pick your poison, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't have that much of a problem with it. I was just
Questioning.
questioning, the logic behind that.
And the house has been vacant since September, so he did purposely leave the floats in because he knew I was going to be doing this.
Okay, and then just in addition to that, there doesn't seem to be any resource areas shown on your plan views, so it's hard to see where exactly the salt marsh area extends to. So if we could get the bank, salt marsh, if there's any beach area all shown and marked on the plan, that would be
on the site plan?
on the site plan. I think it's shown, I think the salt
It's-
marsh is shown in the profile, but it's not shown on the
Yep.
site view.
Yeah, it's only on the elevation. I don't see it on any of the other plans, so that should be added for all of them, actually.
Can I ask a question, Kelly,
Mhm.
to you? The property to the north where it's right on the line, is that something to help this problem, to do something with that problem?
So I don't have the information to hand on that property. Likely it was an old dock that predated the regulations, and at some point they're going to rebuild it, and we probably at that point will make them move it into the center of the property.
There's nothing we can do
I
now.
don't think there would be anything we could do about it now unless they're in some way in violation, but it looks like one of the old docks that was
Okay.
at this.
I thought that'd be an easy solution, but it isn't, so.
Chapter 91, it's a preferential comment. You can get around it if you need to, but not around it. You can, anyway, chapter 91 prefers that docks would be 25 feet from the property line. So if somebody was to take that project over, the best thing to do would be to move it 25 feet. And then you'd have your 75 feet for this dock without, easier.
All right, well, let's keep it more on this dock since that's the one we can actually deal with right now.
Understand?
But there is a 91 license, right?
No,
No, there
this
is
is,
not.
no, this was in 71, so it didn't have anything.
Okay, I'm sorry, you did say 71, I'm sorry.
At least 71. That's the area that I found it in, that I went back to. So, we were in grammar school.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the commission right now while I mull it over. Anybody? Paul, Ellie?
Is the patio permitted, Kelly?
It does show up as existing on a much older plan, yeah.
So that would be, I'm just mulling it over in my head too. How high is the seawall from the patio? Is that like a, so it's a
I
step?
think there's a picture, but I think the edge of the seawall is about this high, this much higher than the patio. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
About,
Okay, so it's a step up.
Of course, if the dock's going to be at 6 feet above the marsh, then it'll be above the wall and closer to the top of the wall.
So they can't move their dock south because they have 112 feet between the two. Is that a possible solution?
That's what we're asking them to do,
Okay.
is to move it further south, yeah. So that it's centered on the property.
If you were to move it completely, so where it leaves, right just south of the patio, Do we start encroaching then upon the 75 feet
Let me see.
to the southern abutter? Probably.
That would be 10 feet. The edge of the patio would be about 10 feet.
Move it
The
30,
the plan.
move it 30 feet. So,
Oh, I see the other side of the patio.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Then you're at 72 feet. Right?
It looks at 30, if you're moving at 30 feet,
Yeah, then you're 72 feet from the one to the south.
that's,
And I think it's close, but I think you're actually crossing a foot or two more marsh when you get down on that area.
It'd be 82 feet?
yeah, I'm thinking it's looking more like 82 feet.
Is my math wrong?
Yeah, 112 minus 30 is 82,
Aha.
when I went to school anyway.
Anyway, without a,
Years ago.
yeah, you're right, 82.
I did the old math.
Then your depth of water is, oh yeah, depth of water looks like
It's shallower over
It's
there.
gonna stay,
a little shallower, but
right? It's gonna stay more or less.
it's really dog legs out a little bit there, but
Well, the -2 contour, from where we are now, the -2 contour is.
oh no, it is the same, yeah.
It's gonna be the
Yeah,
same,
there's just a deeper section and.
because it would be right here.
Mhm.
So where we are now, the -2 contour is 44 feet away from the wall. If I go south of the patio, it's like 43. So it's slightly shallower, and you have to go probably, I'm gonna guess, not more than a foot or two over more marsh. And the 16-foot span isn't a problem. I can go, how is it framed? With 2x8s. I think I can go more than 16 with 2x8s. So again, now you see how I ended up in the decision where we made to keep it here.
Wait, run that one by me again. Why can't you do it south of the patio? You maintain the water.
No, it's slightly shallower. The 2 foot, oh wait, it's less. Wait a minute. Jesus, my brain's backwards. It's nearly the same, or the 2 foot contour is landward, which means it gets a little bit deeper. The 2 foot contour looks like it's about a foot landward of where it is, where the dock currently is shown. I get like 42 feet to the wall, 44 feet to the wall, and then on the south side of the patio, I get like 43. So it gets deeper a little quicker. And I get it that the historical location doesn't really mean anything if it never had a permit. I do understand that. I just want you to understand what my thought process was.
Anybody else have any comments on this?
While
Which
you're
me-
thinking about that, I'll also push for the 1.5 to 1 ratio for the height to width, especially given this is an east-west orientation.
1.5 to 1 to underneath or to,
For the salt marsh, over the salt marsh.
I know you guys always ask for that.
Strangely enough, we're going to keep on asking for
I
it.
know. We haven't done it in this,
Yeah, people keep ignoring it.
we haven't done it in this pond yet.
Well, there's always a first time, Mark. Everybody's got to go. What would have happened if Neil Armstrong said nobody else did it?
True. I mean, that's why my job exists, because somebody has a challenge, and that's what we do, is solve problems. geez, okay, well, if they did that, it goes up, you're saying 1.5 to the, 1.5 to 1 to the underlying structural member or to the decking?
What do they say? They
What do
say
your
the-
regulations say right now?
Have you got the?
It's from the. It's from the
Lowest structural member? Or?
lowest structure, right? The
I don't think they're talking about the decking. Decking. Set
Say again, Kelly?
decking.
from the
Yeah,
decking.
that's what I thought.
So that's what we have. It's 6, if with 2x8 stringers and the decking is 1.5 inches. So 7.5, 8, 9. Yeah, it might go up 3 inches then. We'd only have to go up 3 inches to meet that.
Okay, there you go.
So that's because the decking right now is like 5 feet 9 inches, and you'd want the decking to be at 6 feet, correct?
Yep.
Okay, I don't think anybody's going to cry over that.
Excellent.
Okay, how does the commission feel on the position? Going back to that?
Moving it?
Yes, moving it.
I like to see it moved.
Do you have an opinion where you'd like to see it moved?
Yeah, it's south,
Careful now.
to the south of the patio.
Okay,
So that way, both sides would be more than the 75 feet.
okay.
My math is
And they
right.
will reach the depth of the water there.
I'm sorry.
They will reach the depth of, the needed depth of the water for the floats.
It looks like it from the plan view. I'm going to have to get them to run another section line through there, so I have the elevation portion of it. But if I measure where the -2 contour is, it's a little bit closer, which means it should get deeper quicker.
Yeah.
So to the advantage of depth.
Would actually be better.
Yeah, but better.
Anybody else? Are you in
Yeah,
agreement,
I'd like,
South?
I'm in agreement. I'd like to see it with the new contour on there with it moved south.
But I think we're all aiming for south of the patio.
Okay.
At this point, I believe that's the,
Okay, obviously I'll have to discuss that with them
yep.
and get back to you with a revised plan. So I have to revise it anyway to add, I wonder if those are just on the layer that got shut off. Anyway, but you need to put that on the plan.
Okay, so are you, well, you have to have some survey work done, right?
No, the survey is done in AutoCAD.
Sort of section line, right?
In AutoCAD, you draw a line and
How long will that, that'll take, that's a 10-minute thing, right?
to do the line, yeah. And then I have to get to moving it over a little bit and see what happens. It's not huge. It's not that huge. If you want to try for 2 weeks, I'll see if they can get it to me. Or, oh, you don't want 2 weeks. She doesn't.
I'd really rather try for it. I'd really like to give you a month, Mark. That's what I'd like to do.
Okay, I'm happy with that because I'm already giving Dan more work on top of
I was gonna say, it's
more
like,
work.
you ought to be talking to Dan at this point because, all right, so we're looking at
March 3rd.
March 3rd, material by the 24th of February.
By February 24th and to March 3rd.
Okay,
Okay, I got to see how the agendas, right now with the 2 places I have to be on March 3rd, it's Bourne that starts at 7 and I think Dennis that starts at 6. So those could work. And but yeah, we'll see. We'll always try it.
okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to continue this to March 3rd?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. All those in favor?
Aye.
No? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
No sign.
Don't sign.
No sign.
Don't do anything.
All right, next order of business is another continued hearing from January 20, 2022 for SE 83-2319, Patricia Drenzek, 11 Swordfish Drive, Yarmouth. Proposed reconstruction of existing bulkhead within land under the ocean, coastal bank, land containing shellfish, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And it was open, but we took no testimony, so everybody can participate.
Right, that was one that I missed. So again, Mark Burgess representing the Drenzics. So Kelly also is in, well, we knew that there were 2 outstanding certificates of compliance, which I thought I had given everybody the right information. One of the forms was wrong, but apparently I'd like to hear from the initial engineer instead of me. And
Professional.
I'm going to say, just to be honest with you guys, I'm minorly offended by that, but because I am an engineer, I know these are old orders. They're easy to close out. The house needs an occupancy permit, which means everything else has to be signed off ahead of time. So those kinds of orders should be a no-brainer to close out. And we're just putting more on Dan's plate. So I tried to take care of it. If it's not acceptable for me, then we have to go back to Dan. So we will have to continue this one for well, what we could do, if we can talk about it tonight, because the bulkhead replacement itself should be a no-brainer. And then if we get the certificates of compliance in and they're good to go, you might not have to see me again. Wouldn't that be great? Well, at least on this one. Yeah, I know.
I was gonna say.
I know. You're not going to get rid of me. Sorry. So if you want, we can discuss it. I know you can't act on it, but we can at least discuss it and get that out of the way while we have an earlier evening. So is that okay?
I don't have any issue with opening and listening and giving whatever comments, but we won't do obviously we won't do anything until we get the COCs done.
Correct.
And again, just so you understand, the state law is very clear and explicit that you need to have a stamped engineered to do the COC request when it was this kind of a plan. So that's why we do it. It's no offense to you or anybody else. We wouldn't allow Lynn Hamlin or anybody else who doesn't have an engineer's stamp to do that kind of COC request. So anyhow.
Okay, so this is exactly similar to a bunch of projects that we've done in what I call the Yarmouth Fingers area. It's a replacement of an existing timber seawall, in kind, in place. It's a vinyl seawall. We've done these a bunch of times. They do want to raise it up. I think we're going up a foot, and a couple of the anchor piles will be going up a couple of feet because they want to be able to anchor the floats. The floats are anchored with pipes that come off of the pile and then come down 90 degrees and go into the ground. So in a storm surge, they've seen the floats literally like this because where they're anchored, they can't go up high enough. So they just want to increase the height of the piling so that they can put the pipe to go up higher so the float has more travel room. That's all. There is an existing 10-foot gravel buffer that was mandated by the previous order, and we're not proposing to change that. In these areas where you get overtopping, I guess you have a choice between a gravel buffer, which is 10 feet, or 5 or 6 feet of planted buffer has been kind of the standard we've been following. I proposed that to the applicants, and they'd prefer to keep the 10-foot gravel buffer. If you were out there, you notice that all the tie rods are a tripping hazard, but the way the new bulkhead is designed, they're going to raise that grade up by a foot also, but all the tie rods will be buried, so it won't be so hazardous. There's a timber step down, so you're not going to see a whole lot of. You're only going to see fill really where the gravel is right now, and it will be replaced, 1 foot higher. Separate returns, yep. So separate returns, and then I wish I should get a laser pointer. I have to steal it from my cat. These are the pilings that would be increased in height, well, maybe all of them, but so that this can be anchored up here, So the float doesn't do that at a storm time, even though this would be flooded, but that's why. Bulkhead already has separate returns. Those are all just going to be replaced in kind. This lot is lower than the adjacent lot to the east and about this, and actually a little bit lower. There's kind of a berm between the two properties, if you remember that. So it's going to be, by raising it up a foot, isn't going to redirect any stormwater anywhere else that it isn't already going. It's not directing it onto the neighbor's properties, because we're not going up as high as the property in the background. And it's still a little bit lower of the property in the foreground that you don't see. I've got some pictures of both returns. So with that, really, it's a standard bulkhead replacement for this area. And I'll address any questions.
Okay, board, anybody?
A question about the tie rods.
Yeah?
Will they be looking like that at the end result?
No, because the design that I use now puts the tie rods 2 feet below the top of the wall.
Okay,
So even if we built the wall at the same height, you still won't see the tie rods.
you're building the wall the same height. All you're asking for more elevation
The
is
wall's going to
the
go up 1 foot.
1 foot, okay. Why is that?
Just more flood protection. We can't go up any further because the yard doesn't go up much. I mean, by the time you get to the back of the house, the yard doesn't go up very much. So there's only so much you can do.
I remember from my visit there, and maybe I'm wrong because we go to so many places, weren't there like little, well, for lack of a better term, holes between the gravel and the wall?
Sinkholes?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the characteristic of the starting of the failure of a wall.
so those holes allow the gravel to go into the water,
Well, they're not supposed to, but
but I mean, that's what's
Yeah.
happening.
what happens is that the bugs and the critters at the mud line
Yeah.
eat away at the wood. And then when that goes away, water comes in and
Right.
gradually eats it away until it
So
drops.
what are you
from the
going to
top.
do to prevent that from happening?
Well, the vinyl critters won't be able to
Okay,
do anything to the vinyl.
okay. Except for some mutation of some animal. Which
You never know.
Which we're waiting for.
You never know. Sharknado, I don't know.
There's a smile under here, by the way. Okay.
The float size isn't going to increase, is it?
Nope, all the same. He had to remove some extras, but it's under compliance now.
I was wondering because the posts,
There's a lot of posts.
yeah, the securing posts ran the whole length of that.
So some of the posts won't need to, oh, they're going to remain? 'Cause
I'm not, I'd have to look. I never looked at it from that point of view. I think all they had was that plastic, like a jet ski kind of float thing. And I don't know how that was anchored. So I'm assuming it was tied on to the wood float. But obviously if we don't need the last pipe, then we wouldn't put it back in.
Be comfortable making that a condition. There wouldn't be a pipe there. It's not needed. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Otherwise,
the
he'll
pipes
think,
are only in front of the floats.
yeah, okay,
I just can't tell from here.
It's to discourage any new floats. you're
right.
saying.
Right.
Right.
That's good.
That was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
They've already been discouraged from. That's how I got this job.
You're working from upland, is that what you're doing?
I guess it depends. In general, yes, there's room to get back there. I don't know why somebody would want to put a crane on a barge and do it that way, but
Checking to make sure that that was still in the same idea. We were all having the same idea.
that is what I'm thinking.
Okay,
And if I know the company that might do this, that's the way they'll do it.
okay, I would include that.
If it's anything different, we could come back to ask you about protocols to do it from the water.
Okay.
Did DMF give us a time of year restriction for this one or
Yes,
not?
they did. Oh,
No, I
no,
don't
for
think
not for
they
this
did.
one, no.
I think they were actually very happy.
So they just said same footprint and elevation, but I asked them about the elevation and they said that it didn't really apply in this situation.
Yeah, they don't. I think that's the first time that I've ever seen them ask me about elevation. don't know why that would matter to them, but you never know. Okay, so this one, we still have 2 COCs. It's, so does anybody have any question or problems or issues with the bulkhead portion of the project?
No, I think as far as that goes, I'm fine. Everybody else? So we just have to wait for the COCs.
Okay, so it's possible, all Dan wanted to do was go out and take a couple of GPS shots to check the elevations. So it's possible that he could get those letters to you within a week. And then if you're okay with this, then we could continue it 2 weeks, but I wouldn't even have to represent. Is that fair?
That'll work.
So yeah, if we get the COC requests in by the 10th, then we would be okay to have the COCs on the agenda.
Yep, and if not, we have to bump it, and I totally understand that.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to continue to February 17th with receipt of COC materials by the 10th of.
Oh, wait, no, that's 2
No,
weeks or a
That doesn't
month?
make any sense.
No, 2 weeks.
February 17th.
17th with the
Yeah, we
COC
have to
request
have
by
the
the
10th.
10th in a week.
Oh, I wrote March 3rd.
A week
Jeez.
from today, yeah. Yes?
Mhm.
Right?
Yep,
Okay.
Yep, I agree. Sorry.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, David.
So second?
Ellie,
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Cross your fingers.
I got
Don't
it.
sign it.
I understood. When I don't see your
I
signature,
just figured I'd just,
I
one of these
appreciate it.
days, I'm gonna tell you to sign 2 copies and you're gonna be falling
I
over.
won't know what to do.
no
Yes?
signing.
No?
Continuation. And that also need to pay for the peer review fees as well.
All right, so next order of business is the stormwater management permit application, which has been continued so many times, I can't even read all the dates. So
Don't.
this was for SW 2021-002, Evan Cohen, 125, 133 Route 6A, Yarmouth, proposed redevelopment of an existing commercial site, including parking, drainage, and septic improvements, with existing building for 125 to be converted to the doctor's office. Existing 133 will have minimal improvements, including new utility connections. We have a request to continue to February 17th. Is there a
The
motion to?
only issue with continuing to the 17th is that if we receive the new material by the 10th, it then is going to have to go back to the peer reviewer again. So we end up in this constant cycle where we're never ready.
My God, it's like,
He was
So-
mentioning that.
what do we have to do to get this out of our hair?
We need to get to the point where the peer reviewer is satisfied with the material that's been submitted.
Okay,
But
so,
that's not likely to happen before this. Well,
so we might as well
if-
put this off until,
if they submit the new material by the 10th, there is a chance that I could have the comments by the 17th. I just won't have them by the 10th. So we would just, let's do it for the 17th on the off chance that we do get them, just so we can get this off the agenda. But I'm not hopeful that that's going to happen.
Dan was saying that he was waiting for the information to be able to get it to you as early as tomorrow.
Okay, so if that's the
Let's do it
case,
by
then
this
we
one.
might have enough time that we can get the peer, and that's on the basis that the peer reviewer is then satisfied, so that we can then close it up at the next hearing. But I'm going to be hopeful and suggest that we go February 17th, given that's what he's requested.
all right, do we have a motion to continue to February 17th?
So moved.
For a second?
Second, David?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You don't know how badly I want to say no on this, but
Yeah, I know.
carries.
There you go.
I have never, think a chance.
Getting fatter and fatter. And I'm not talking about myself. Yeah. Just. Righty.
Good.
Good on this last one for the 8 Harbor Road. We can go ahead and issue it easy.
The Pilgrim is good. Setauket, I feel like we need an ongoing condition, so we might want to do that separately. I did see people in the audience for that too.
So 8 Harbor 755 is okay.
755 is yes.
1134 is okay.
No, it needs some discussion.
Okay. All right, so moving on to certificates of compliance. Do the easy ones first for this is SE 80. Do I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for SE 83-2000 18 Pilgrim Road? SE 83-2175 170 Mayflower Terrace, and SE 83-755 for 8 Harbor Road.
So moved, David.
Second, Tom.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Moving on, a certificate of compliance request for SE 83-2165 271 Setauket Road and 34 Fallons Pond Road. This is okay, but where there's some ongoing conditions that are needed.
Yeah, so largely the project looked fine, but there is a slope there where they did the restoration work, and there are just a few bare areas that it was a little hard this time of year to tell whether the vegetation overall looked pretty good. I think maybe there will be the need for some reseeding in the next growing season. So the options are to just issue the certificate of compliance and require ongoing monitoring and reseeding as needed. I think given the minimal work required for that, then that may be appropriate. Otherwise, you could deny it this time and require a refiling after the next growing season.
Is it extensive enough that would require?
I didn't think so. I think that if we just require an ongoing condition to go back and monitor, there's just a few small bare areas that need a little attention.
All right, I'm fine with that ongoing
271
condition.
Setauket Road.
Anybody else have any comments or concerns with that?
This is 271 Setauket Road, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, 2165, SE 83-2165.
Yep. No, I have no
Else?
question. I have
No other
question on
issues? You're
that.
good with the ongoing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for SE 83-2165 with the ongoing conditions? Sorry.
So moved.
Second, Tom.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. And that comes down to our last certificate of compliance request for SE 83-11348 Harbor Road. And there's some issues with this.
Yeah, so this was an old order of conditions for the construction of the house. The plan, just bring up the file. The plan was fairly vague in terms of the activity around the structure, but I did find that for the most part, they had left the good vegetated buffer. They hadn't gone beyond the work plan limit. There was some grading and landscaping. Let me grab some photos so I can't talk and click at the same time. Some landscaping steps to reach the grade for a walkout basement at the bottom. So that was not on the plan, but it just was things that made sense that detail wasn't included at the time. So overall, I thought that the site looked good. The only thing which came up, which was contrary to the approved plan, and I will see, this is the back area. You can see they had some steps down to the walkout basement on either side, but the vegetated buffer starts here and it's all pretty stable through that area. So this one here, I think shows.
Nice car.
Yeah, it's beautiful. There was proposed pervious driveway on the property as part of the approved plan, but instead of doing the driveway, they paved a section of the road layout on the edge, front edge of the property. And they paved that for parking at the roadside. So it's not on the property. and it's not pervious. So I think I put in the comments, Bob Perry had responded with his thoughts on the impacts of that area. It obviously is contributing some amount of runoff to the road runoff that runs down the road and into the wetland area. It's not a large area, so it's not hugely significant, but I wanted to call it out because it was a deviation from the approved plan, so that you could consider that. I guess one thing to bear in mind is that there would have been an access to the property through that road right of way anyway. So the extension beyond what would have been required for the driveway is not much. I guess it's just the fact that it's paved.
And it's this, what's the resource we're talking about?
It's buffer zone to a vegetated wetland, but it's
Okay.
pretty far back from the wetland, but it's the road, this area will run into the road, which then goes
Runs
down the
down.
road and into the wetlands. But
The
it's
rest of the road
contributing,
the rest of the road is paved?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, and it's a pretty small
All right, well,
contributor.
given that, then I guess I don't have an issue with that. Anybody have any other comments or concerns with it? We good to issue as it is then?
Well, I think it would be more invasive to have them tear it up and put in stone. Or put in the driveway.
Yeah, I think at this point,
So everybody good? Yeah. All right, then would somebody like to make a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for SE 83-1134 8 Harbor Road?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, next order of
Before
business.
you do that, there's signatures.
Oh, thank you. See, somebody's thinking.
I don't have much on my mind. so.
You guys can call that out whenever you see me failing to put that down. I think it makes Paul a little happy when he gets, he gets the folder on time.
There you go. My hands are so dry, I can't open the paper. No, we haven't gotten to, I don't think we've gotten to that.
Two?
Two?
No, I said number
This
two.
is the second.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, this one is 2000, SE 83, 2000.
Did I send down there? What's that?
We sent three down so far. And you should have one,
sheets
two.
there, the Harbor Road,
Ah, that's
Yeah.
why. Okay.
because they're both in that folder.
And this one is
Should
2165.
put post it on there, remind everyone. as they do that.
Two sheets.
Got it.
All right, moving on to enforcement. We have a continued enforcement
Two
from December 16th, 2021 for 60 Camelot Road, unpermitted vegetation removal within the buffer zone. This is just the sign, right? Is this right? Or am I on the other one?
It's just a sign. The only thing I'll add is that I spoke to the property owner and she asked whether we would consider allowing, because she cut the vegetation, she didn't remove the vegetation, and whether she could wait until the spring or till the growing season to see how much of it just comes back
Two sheets.
on its own before doing restoration work, because she's very confident that it's all going to come back pretty quickly.
This was BBW, right?
I believe there is some BB, we don't have a delineation, but I do believe some of the
This
cutting was
is
in the BBW.
755.
Well, I guess if we gave her a date. If we give her a date,
Pretty low.
what is that? Is that Phragmites and
This is mostly like cattails.
Oh, that's
and-
cattail, yeah.
There's not a lot of frag through there. This is the area here, so I mean, it is very low. So it's cut.
How long would she need?
I mean, I guess
Full
you could,
growing season?
you would probably have to go through the growing season, and then once we're later in the growing, well, mid-growing season, we'd be able to see how much of it's coming back and what's coming back, and
Yeah.
then be able to plant by the fall, I guess.
11:34.
So we
It'd be
could,
June 30th for the determination, and
Come
then,
down.
yeah, we should be able to see a good amount of
October.
growth by then.
well, we'll want to see a plan, right?
Got it somewhere.
For,
So June 30th,
well, I think a monitoring report to see what it looks like, and then if we need restoration, then restoration plan by but in time,
September,
in time
September
for
1st, I would
planting.
say.
Yeah,
right? And then we could decide on it. Well, actually,
we'd decide on it at the June 30th point, and then whether they need the plan by September 1st, right?
Right.
September 30th.
and if they need to plan, or if they need a plan submitted by the September 1st for planting by October 31st.
You won't have a
Okay,
sheet on the
September.
violation.
So
Well,
You may.
it's a very, very tight window on the other side then. But I'm fine with that then.
Okay.
Everybody good with that one?
Yes.
Sorry, which one were you just talking about? I'm getting them all.
60
Camelot.
Camelot, okay.
Yeah.
And so do you want to amend the enforcement order, and then we'll just go ahead and sign it?
Yeah, if you
can
sign
amend
it, and I'll
right?
amend it, yeah.
Okay, would everybody like to make a motion to issue the enforcement order as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Go.
All right, next order of business, another enforcement for 33 Prince Road, Yarmouth, violation of order of conditions, unpermitted vegetation removal and deck and patio expansion within the buffer zone.
So this one was the result of the COC request for the dock. And we found that the dock, I'm just trying to see where the photos are.
Enforcement order.
That the dock was oversized, so we denied the COC request and requested that the floats be reduced back to the permitted size. But at the same time, we noted that there was the expansion of a deck area and a patio area and removal of buffer zone vegetation in the no disturb zone. So we have a draft enforcement order for restoration of the area that was disturbed.
They're taking the patio back to what was approved. right?
Yeah, what was previously approved, yeah. And the deck has been extended out as well on the side.
And that's all coming back to approved. Is that what that's what the enforcement order is asking, right?
Yes, I think so. Let me just check the wording to make sure. Oh, and yeah, I'm pleased I looked at it. Okay, so the list of enforcement actions were failure to record the order of conditions and extension permit with the Registry of Deeds for that 1186, SE 83 1186, failure to complete work according to that approved plan. So that's the oversized floats, and then carrying out with work without approval, removal of buffer vegetation, deck and patio expansion. So resource area alterations shall be corrected and the resource areas returned to their original condition.
Okay.
But also that the order of conditions needs and the extension need to be recorded, and removal of unpermitted hardscape and replanting of native buffer vegetation.
So the OOC still hasn't been recorded yet?
No.
Okay.
So we can do that ourselves as well if we need to.
Is it the same homeowner that did that work and did not record the order? Is it all the same or?
Believe so.
I can answer that question
Oh,
if you'd
thank
like.
you.
Okay, you are, just state your name for the record.
Jeffrey Cutter,
Okay, and you are
Yes, it's the
a
same.
son.
son, okay.
members. The order of conditions is going back to work that was done in 1992, Hurricane Bob. I got a letter from you all in December requesting, so I hired the engineer to come out, saying there was an open order of conditions or not a closed permit. He came out, I guess, gave you some information, and he said the float is too big. My father's passed away, by the way, so that would be work that I have files on this, his name, engineer, so I was able to track down the engineer and hire him to do the certificate of compliance work. I just got this letter, by the way, I just got the violation notice yesterday. I opened it, so I wasn't sure what to expect tonight.
Okay.
Just trying to understand what the problems are and solve the problems.
All right, so all of the work that was done by your father then? He was the owner of the property at the time, or?
Yeah, we have had this home since 1970.
Okay,
So
This work was done fairly recently, right?
that work was done not that recently, actually. That is, I would check the file on that, but that was probably, so what is, let me just be specific. This work was not all done together either. So we did go for a permit to change the decking from the rotted PT to the PVC material. And there must have been a misunderstanding because they said we didn't need a permit. I'm sure they didn't realize we were that close to the water. So
so when you ask for a permit, you're saying, when you ask a permit, you're saying, you just applied for a building permit? Is that?
yeah, building permit.
There isn't a building permit for the deck expansion though, right? Because I think they said
Excuse
that.
me?
The building department doesn't have a permit for the deck expansion though, because they said they were issuing enforcement for it.
Yeah, so the deck was not it was not intended to be expanded. It was, the original was going to be, it was just replacement. And it was actually just curved. So it doesn't actually get any closer to the resource area than the original deck, but it does curve around. It does result in an expansion.
What about the patio?
So the patio, what was done there was brick and bluestone, and that was replaced, and that expansion of the patio, as you have a photo of, I want to say that was 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah, 4 years ago. I would have the paperwork on it. In that case, we didn't know any better.
Okay, and
We were replacing brick and bluestone, and I thought we were on this side of the wall. We weren't going, it's in sand, it's pervious. I didn't know we did anything wrong.
you don't need a building permit in Yarmouth for
For the
patio?
deck, they did, not the patio.
I did pull a building permit too, because we had to reside the back of the house. And, and I have that here because I just want to show that, we tried to do the right thing, and I have files and files of all the building permits we pulled, and my dad was a little bit of a procrastinator, so he obviously didn't file the order of conditions, but we can correct that.
Okay, and so the order has, so obviously, and so the order of conditions was for the dock, right?
Yes.
Okay. With the dock, do we have any, does it show by any chance that there was a patio there of any sort?
On the
Do
dock,
you know?
on the dock
Yes,
plan?
it does.
Yeah, on the dock plan.
So there's two other permits for this property that have been closed with certificates of compliance, and they show the previous footprint of the patio.
So it's just an expanded,
It's an expanded patio and deck and removal of the vegetation for that.
okay. I mean, how much expansion are we talking about for the patio?
I would need to do the measurements, but this is the area.
If you were to zoom in on it, I could show you, sir. And I could,
So that's the area of vegetation here in this area that was removed.
But I'm not seeing any. You said there was a previous patio there.
Yeah.
It was just expanded?
This area here was patio. I can bring up.
Oh,
the
so,
old-
okay, now I'm seeing what you're talking about. That's a little bit more than expansion, I think, or that's a little bit more than just a foot or two over on each side or something. Yeah, I'd have to agree with the removal and restoration. There should be some plantings along the bank.
Yeah. I mean, maybe for the deck expansion, I mean, I guess this is up to you guys, but there could be increased mitigation plantings as mitigation for the expanded deck and the no disturb zone. But where the patio has gone right up to the top of bank and the vegetation's been removed through there, I would say that vegetation would need to be replaced.
Yeah, so cutting the expansion off somewhere 3 or 4 feet back of the bank, right?
Yeah, so that it's bringing it back to this here. So whatever that, I can do the measurements on it, but whatever that depth of vegetation is, that would need to be restored.
Remove it and then mitigate for the deck.
And then mitigate for this deck area
Right.
by additional plantings along this side. Which it looks like we've lost
Could fit
plantings
in.
along here
Yeah.
anyway.
we have not lost plantings. They've only been trimmed down, from my understanding.
Well, it looks like
On
there's some
one
erosion.
side, obviously on the patio side,
Yeah,
Yeah.
on this side here, because it looks like there's some bare ground
Looks like
through
there's erosion
here.
going on there.
And then there's full vegetation through here. I know there could be different times of year, but
well, if you look at, and I do have them, like, as I said, we've been there since 1970. The old photo on the left, there is a water spigot on the corner of that deck, right below the 3, and a shower.
Mhm.
Not a real shower, but a spigot. That was once upon a time easily accessible. So this growth has actually come to encroach on the existing deck that was there.
I don't see that, but
Well, you don't see it because you don't have the older pictures, but what I'm saying is that this is Rosa Rugosa. It ends up spreading. There is a shower and spigots there where we used to wash our feet off when we came up here. This came up here. This is all thorns. So again, our mistake, but I didn't realize that couldn't be removed. And because it was all thorns and the dogs would end up in there and balls and stuff like that, that's why the pavers were put there. And it also stored the kayaks. Instead of being here, it was stored there.
so I
But-
guess on the upside, you can replace it with other vegetation now. So it'll be.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna insist, I mean, I can put back some vegetation there. I'm here to discuss what makes most sense and what's practical. I would beg the commissioner to consider, we've been there for 50 years and we're not abusers of we maintain the property in the area. And again, I think, well, I know I'm not supposed to say too much and I should probably be hiring this gentleman behind me, but things were a long time ago. I know rules have changed and all that, but if you were to go back and look at the 200-foot piers and floats and things that have gone, there's been at least 5 docks that have gone in around us and piers, lengthy piers over marshland. We're not the problem. So I'm kind of throwing myself on the mercy of the court here. I'll do what has to be done, but I'd like to discuss it because a lot of stuff that goes on around us is really, this has been here, as I said, that dock and pier have been there for since 1970 and before. I have proof and written stuff on that and photos.
You can see the spigot.
You can see the spigot, yeah.
All right,
So that vegetation continued all the way along from the edge of the deck then.
Mr. Chairman,
you would fill it in, right? Paul?
just so that I understand, I don't know if this thing is working. If we go back to that picture of the two, so with the picture on the right and the patio is that whole white area on the right corner, and that was all put in without permit. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
That is, we hired a professional landscaping company and
But they didn't bother to get a permit from
I
anybody?
didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't know.
And so this also, just so I understand, it's a building, maybe not a building permit problem because they don't require a permit for a patio.
Correct.
But it clearly is a problem for the Conservation Commission because it encroached farther and closer to the wetlands than it should have.
Yeah, and at the time the deck was expanded, there wasn't a building permit sought for that either.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that would have been the opportunity
So
for,
there's been a series of violations, whether it's been over 50 years or 2 years, it doesn't really matter, does it?
I think it
Oh.
does.
kind of does, but
Yes, but
this
but
is,
these have been much more recent.
Yeah.
So
Well, okay, then let's focus on the recent ones, and they have to be corrected. That's the gist of it, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And we still have the problem with this oversized dock, am I right?
yeah, so,
Votes, yeah.
that
yeah,
will
so
have to
the
be
oversized,
corrected though, right?
yeah, the
That's-
floats need to be corrected.
Well, we could file an application.
For the regulations allow a maximum of 200 square feet, so you could file an application for up to 200 square feet.
What did the original application have there?
For the dock?
Yeah, for the float.
Wait, is the dock under consideration of this? That's not part of the enforcement order,
It
though,
is
right?
in the enforcement order.
Yeah.
It is, okay.
We
all
can
right.
remove it and, but.
No.
It was permitted 128.
They
Supposed
have
to be 128 and they have 320.
20.
20.
20.
Yeah, that's a big oops.
Someone did a lot of kayaking.
So I have removed the new patio area and replaced with plantings, which is, I guess, what's in there. Mitigate for the deck expansion, but would that be an after the fact filing with proposed mitigation?
I would just do an after the fact filing because, I mean, you're going to leave it. We're going to leave them have it. It's just they have to mitigate for it. So that's the easiest part of it.
Mhm.
Mitigate for the deck,
For the deck.
the
if
deck, right.
that's what you
and
can-
the patio.
Remove the new area of patio.
In other
and-
words, draw a line right across from where the deck is. Yeah, the deck to
So
the
it'd
other side.
basically be returning to this condition. here
Right.
And replanting.
And replanting.
So we need a planting plan.
So I guess an after the fact filing could cover all of those things there, right? It could include removal and removal of patio and replanting and the deck and the mitigation for the
I
deck.
would do the deck
Do them separately.
as a separate
Yeah.
thing and then have the enforcement order cover the removal of the patio and replanting of the area. Do that under a separate.
You can have them both under the enforcement order. It's just we'll only require an after the fact filing
Right.
for the deck and the mitigation
Right.
and the floats.
And the floats, you said, what did we say? We said we're at 320? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and they were
Supposed to be 120.
permitted for 128.
So the after the fact filing could address 200 square feet of floats as well?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Kelly?
Would the after the fact filing be able to include 200 square feet of floats?
If it's licensed for the 128, then the applicant has the choice to return it to the licensed configuration or apply for additional floats.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's,
Yeah.
So it's just whether or not they want to include that in this after the fact filing, or
You can include the two options to solve it, yeah, but to say 200 square feet, you might want to, after knowing what it's going to cost, you might want to say, well, I'm just going to keep the float that's there, and then a whole issue goes away.
You can't keep the float that's there because the float that's there is 320 square
yeah, he'd
feet.
have to go back to what he has to.
Yeah.
So you either have the choice of going back to what you were permitted for at the 128 square feet. And that's a wash. Or you can apply, but with no guarantee that you'll get the 200. That's the.
Or do
that's
both.
an after the fact.
Or do both. Take it back to the original. If we decide we won't, we can always.
If you decide, yeah, if you take it back to the 128, then you don't have to do any filing. You just have to do the filing for the after the fact filing for the deck and the mitigation planting that's a part of that. If you want to go for more float, you won't be able to, you can't keep what you have because it's far too much than that
Yes.
it's more than the 200 that we allow. You could, if you wanted to at some time, and you don't have to do it necessarily at the same time, you can do it later on, but you could apply for a increase to the 200, but there's no guarantee that you would get that.
and can I ask if you have a good set of paperwork there? Do you have the original order of condition and extension for the dock permit?
Yes and no. When looking through it, well, I say no because I do have the extension, and I also have a letter from my father saying that due to circumstances beyond his control, I think it was written to the board at the time, he has not been able to do the work within that time, but he did not
Yeah, so that
also
was-
file a subsequent. So he filed an extension to 1998, and that was, he didn't file an additional extension.
No, I mean, so what I'm getting at is that the original order of conditions and the extension permit that was issued, neither of those were recorded with the Registry of Deeds, and that needs to be done. So if you have the original documents, you would be able to record those. Otherwise, I would need to get you certified copies of those.
I might have them. This is just a tiny file. I have, Cape Cod Docks and Marine Tech who did the work.
Yeah, so if you want to have a look, and then if you're not able to find them, I'll get
Do a true
attest
copy,
copies, yeah.
true attest cop,
Yeah.
whatever, you know what I'm saying? I have one last question. Who was the landscaper who did the patio?
I don't like to throw people under a bus, but I do know he sold his business over the past year.
So it would be,
I don't know who sold their landscape
Do I get
design.
any favor by telling you?
I was just like, I'm interested, that's all.
We're trying to educate landscapers.
He was handling landscaping. Handling landscapes.
We're trying to educate landscapers that when they come to do this kind of work, they should be coming to us so that this issue doesn't come up again.
So again, just to tell you what we did, there was brick and bluestone, front of the house walkway coming all the way around to the hot tub. And honestly, it was his suggestion, and we talked about the thorns and all that. It was his suggestion to do that. He says, oh, great, we'll store the kayaks there too and stuff. And
Well, he should have known better, number one.
I saw the wall and I said, oh, we're on the side of the wall. That's fine, Yeah. I agree.
And let's send a letter to them.
So the commission has jurisdiction for 100 feet from the top of that wall, just so you're aware of for any future projects.
100 feet, yeah, that goes, well, that's why the septic's out
yeah, the
front. I mean, that
entire-
basically goes to the wall, to the road, probably.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
just keep in mind that anything that you're considering doing that's going to alter the landscape in any way, including cutting, well, I mean, it's, if you're trimming your regular ornamental bushes, that's not a big deal, but if you're going to be doing an addition or a deck or something like
Yeah,
that,
I get that.
and it's within the 100 feet of that bank, the top of that bank, then by all means, at least come and talk to Kelly before you do anything, so we keep you out of any other trouble. So
Yeah, I went to
okay.
the building department and that was my mistake. I wasn't thinking.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion, or we haven't amended it, right? You're
No,
just doing the after the fact, but that's okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to ratify or issue the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
All those, sorry, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, so you're going to send him a copy of the enforcement order then, right? So in a week or so, you'll get a copy of the enforcement order that will spell out exactly what you're supposed to do. And they'll give deadlines and dates for that as well. So
I'm sure that will take into account weather, right?
yes, yeah, it's like, so we don't expect you to be out in the middle of a snowy season trying to rip things out. We'll definitely want you to wait until the appropriate time to remove things, plant things, and we'll give you, I would say probably, you're gonna have to give them probably 3 months for an after the fact filing, because there's just no way you're gonna get an engineer to get that work done before that, so. So you have plenty of time to get that plan put together, but you'll want to contact an
Yeah, you wanna
engineer
start now.
soon. Yeah, don't put it off until a month before thinking, oh, I'll get somebody. Just, literally do that as soon as you possibly can. Start contacting an engineers, and so that they can put everything together for the after the fact filing. Okay.
What do you need the engineer to do exactly?
It's an after the fact filing.
As built?
It's called an after the fact filing. It's a notice of intent. So it'll cover the expansion of the deck and any mitigation planting that's going to be required because of the expansion of the deck. And then you'll also, in the meantime, you should also consider whether or not you want to take the floats back to the 128 square feet that you were permitted
What are
and
you
leave it at
throwing away?
that. And
This?
you're
This
good
thrown
on
away?
that.
Doesn't be thrown away.
Or if you want to
Thank you very much.
continue that, if you want to get it to the point where you try and expand the floats to the 200 square feet, you can apply for that as well.
Okay.
Okay.
2-to-1 mitigation for the deck,
For which
the mitigation for the deck.
Yeah, it's
it will
2 to
be,
1.
yeah, right, 2 to 1.
What's that?
I was just
Mitigation
checking.
on the deck, I'm still curious about, but you can send it to me and we can discuss it.
Mhm. Okay.
Because that doesn't get us really any closer to the resource area.
The 35 foot is a no disturb zone though, so if you have an expanded deck within the 35 foot, then it would have required a variance to the regulations. So regardless of whether it's no closer, it's an expansion within a no disturb zone.
Ellie,
Okay.
do you know what the date is of the order that you're looking for?
The date of the order?
Yeah, I'm on the registry right now.
I have it.
Oh,
I know I have it.
okay.
Okay.
Whether it's, you're at the registry of deeds, so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying it probably was recorded, but a lot of times it never makes it back to conservation, that's all. And
Yeah,
you
I
might
think
find it.
Heidi checked, but she may not have been able to find it, but
If you have the extension, we can work backwards.
extension was issued on June 8th, 1992.
Okay,
Should
so,
we?
What, huh? Why are we, I mean, this is not, this does not have to be determined right now, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Better off, it's after
All right.
extended time for everyone.
okay, so we're all set. You are.
You dropped something there, a card or something?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming in. And we will, like I said, we'll get, Kelly will send a copy of the enforcement order to you within a week or so. All right,
Send a planting list, I presume, with that.
that'll tell you exactly, yeah,
Yeah, they'll give you the details of
Planting
everything.
list,
already.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, sorry about that.
Let's see, next order of business, other business, the approval of meeting minutes for January 5th and January 20th, 2022.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 6th, 2022.
And are you going to do with 20 or do we have an issue with 20?
No, I also recommend that we approve January 20th,
One
2022.
spelling correction.
What's your spelling correction? On which one?
Bottom.
I had one, I think it's the same one, which says ready versus read.
yeah,
Yeah, I
ready.
get- I
Yeah,
said
we got
that.
that one.
I've got that as well, so we all got that.
Yeah,
We all got that.
we're all good at it.
Pens out.
At least she knows we read it.
Those red pens out.
You know, it could be worse. We could not read it.
All right, so it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
So sorry, just, we didn't have Pat at the January 6th meeting. So if you want to abstain from the vote for that, we can do a 5.
I'm abstaining
You're
from.
Pat will
abstaining.
abstain from the vote.
Thank you, Pat.
Is it true, Kelly, you put one mistake in each time to make sure
Exactly,
we're?
it's
I thought that
deliberate. I
was
just
it.
want to make sure you're reading them.
Okay, all those in
After all
favor?
that hard work.
Aye.
Aye.
Pretty
Aye.
good, but aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Close enough.
Ready.
thank you very much.
Other business not reasonably anticipated. Anybody?
I don't know how this would work, but I know a lot of other commissions have a limit on how many applications they allow per meeting. I don't think we have one of those, so I don't know if that's something we want to look at.
I don't think we can, only because the state law says,
We have to hear them within 21 days.
Okay,
yeah.
So we would need to get a waiver from people.
all right.
And I imagine most people would not be
I was
inclined
gonna
to
say,
do
yeah,
that,
it's
but
like, I think most
I
people
agree
would
with
consider.
you.
Yeah, I saw that stink guy you gave him.
Yeah, we're up to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 items on the next agenda. So,
Well, we'll bring dinner.
yeah, we might have to provide dinner for that one.
Kelly, you going to bring up the recreation, open space?
I mentioned it briefly, but I was going to hold it until the next meeting because I need to do a little more project planning on how we're going to proceed. There seems to be differing views. So the open space and recreation plan, the current version is expiring in 22, so we need to do an update to that plan. And it's a fairly lengthy process of public outreach and updates. And so I'm looking to hire a consultant to help with that. And I'm going to be requesting from you funding from the Conservation Fund to pay for the consultant. But I'm just figuring out what the project will kind of look like in terms of who's involved and how we will do it. Because there seems to be differing ways, like sometimes just town staff does the updates and then they kind of take it to the different committees for comment. A lot of places, and I think what they encourage is that you actually form a committee who are focused on the update. And so you would have Conservation Commission member, someone from the Open Space Committee, someone from CPC, someone from Recreation, and then whichever staff are needed as well to support that. And then anyone else who was interested. And then they're kind of the lead for it and they manage it with the staff support. And I think they prefer you to do it that way because you're getting, it seems more
different
inclusive. You're
right.
getting a wider variety rather than just kind of the staff doing it and then saying, are you good with this kind of thing? So I'm kind of working through that part of the process at the moment to see, because I know the previous update was done by staff. So I will give you an update on that at the next meeting. But there was a suggestion that we do a subcommittee of the commission, which the commission is able to do, set up a subcommittee who would lead that. So if you want to think about it.
How many years does it get renewed?
It's
Every
valid for
5?
7 years,
7 years.
but
okay.
because it was done in-house last time, the update took 3 years to do. So by the time it was approved in 2018, we only had 4 years left and now it's expired again. So that's why I'm like, let's get it done now this year so we actually get 7 years out of it. So that's kind of my plan. So I'll do a little more thinking on it this week and then have more of a plan for the next meeting. But if you at least want to, if you haven't looked at it, then I would suggest we have a hard copy, but it's also available online if you want to have a look at it and just kind of see what it includes. It's a pretty lengthy document.
It's an open space and recreation.
And then the other item I have is the conference. So I don't know if anyone's had a chance to have a look and select what items which events they want to attend. I did print off some registration forms if you want to fill them in with your choices. It's all virtual again this year, so it's really good in terms of flexibility. And it does span 2 weeks, so they have like a series of events each day over that 2-week period. So there's some really good ones as well.
What the topics are.
There's the short list,
That'd be helpful.
and then there's the long list.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quite a few. I'm going to do the unlimited bundle because there's some quite good ones. One of the ones I found most interesting, and I've seen this advertised in a couple of places, is the state they seem ready to release their draft updates to the state regulations for flood zone. I know they're on the agenda for the conference, and they're presenting to another organization next week that I'm going to theirs. So I know, I believe when I arrive, but
When somebody comes home and reports that they actually had somebody show up and say something substantive, I will be.
yes, I guess, yeah, it doesn't mean there's
Is there a
action.
deadline you need from us?
I think we do want to, do they have a registration deadline?
It was
They sent out an email today. I would say if you could get it
Sooner
to
the better.
me by mid next week, maybe,
Okay.
I think, just so I can get it processed. So if you just fill in your details and then tick the boxes for which ones you want to attend. Did you all get the email today with the registration?
I haven't checked my email.
You want me to give
Got
you
one
these
last-
so you
During the
can?
week. I got it a couple days ago.
Okay, I'll give you these because I don't know if you guys, so this is part of the,
Do we have to give this back to you?
yeah, so if you
Okay.
fill it in and give it back to me. Tell me, you planning on
For what?
to go to the conference? or-
No.
No. Very cool.
Can I just say something about this FEMA thing we sat through yesterday? So I sat through the FEMA coastal erosion study report last night, 6:30 to 8. And it was really interesting. And for me, I don't know how Kelly felt, but they have these maps to show erosion and sea level rise of 2030, 2050, and 2100. Not that they are going to be 100% accurate, but it was really interesting. I said to Kelly this when I came in today, I said it was one of those things I thought the planning board should be there so they don't approve houses that in 2030 or 2050 will be underwater, you know? I know that's not within our purview, but it just seemed to me to make sense. So anyway, I'm going to write up my notes. I'll send it to Kelly. Kelly can add anything or correct anything I did wrong. And I don't have very many notes, and she can send it out to you.
I'd
Sure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And on that same note, the update to our bylaw has been added to the town meeting warrant for the spring town meeting. So I'm going to be sending out to you the draft version of the bylaw and preparing some materials for kind of public education on what the updates relate to. So we'll be doing public comment on that, unfortunately, at the next meeting because the time frame is tight for getting it done. Just so you're aware, if anyone asks you about it, then I'll send you, I'll put a copy in your packets and I'll send you a link to it as well. So you have
And
that.
who's cooking dinner that night?
And well, I would ask that everybody, if you have a comment about anything, write it down, try and get your thoughts organized so we can present it very quickly to everybody and because we're also taking public comment on it at the same time, as well as from the other town boards and things, town committees, I guess, right?
Mhm. That's all I have.
Anything else? Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned at 7:26.
And I stand. Ugh.